Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is The Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
Today's broadcast is brought to you by NatureBox. NatureBox ships tasty and guilt-free snacks right to your door with over 100 flavors to choose from, like the just-added mini Belgian waffles, strawberry lemonade fruit stars, and sweet and salty nut medley. You can try them out for free. Log on and start your free trial today at naturebox.com/thinkingatheist. naturebox.com/thinkingatheist. I'm doing a tour stop in San Francisco this coming Saturday. I'd love a chance to meet you. Going to be a great time. 1:30 in the afternoon this coming Saturday. It's sponsored by the Atheist Advocates of San Francisco. They put the whole thing together. $6 charge at the door to just help cover the cost of renting the venue. And so bring everybody out. Going to be 1:30 on Saturday in San Francisco, California. I'm going to be in Seattle on June the 4th, and then Vancouver the weekend of June the 5th, 6th, and 7th for Imagine No Religion 5. If you want to see all the details, the links, ticket details for all this stuff, just go to thethinkingatheist.com/events, and you can see them all listed by date with links to the specific pages. But San Francisco in just a few days, I will see you there on Saturday. Originally, the show on the books this week was a rebroadcast of a conversation that I did just a few days ago in the Pal Talk Believers versus Non-Believers chat room. And I'd done this, I think, a year or two ago, where I just sort of put myself out there, and atheist and theist alike will come with a comment or question or challenge or what have you. And we had a great 2 hours. Unfortunately, when it was over, it became apparent that we had some audio problems, and it just wasn't broadcast worthy. But it was an interesting night. You know, you had some atheists in there sounding off. We had one evolution denier, had a couple of Muslims, and I thought it would be great radio, and it just didn't pan out. So here I am at the last second without a show topic, without anything on the books. Well, sometimes that's when this show is at its best, when we just go for it. So if you look at my desk, you see my studio right now. There's no show prep. There are no papers. There's no Post-it notes. There's nothing. It's just us, just you and me, and kind of whatever happens will happen. It's been kind of an unpredictable week anyway. Just a few days ago, you would have seen me and my family crammed into a storm shelter with tornado sirens going off overhead. It's been kind of a wild season for tornadoes in Oklahoma. This is not uncommon for us. We call it Tornado Alley for a reason. Right here in the Midwest, the two air masses always meet, and it creates a ton of twisters every single season. And it was a couple of years ago, I was actually driving back from a tour stop in, I think it was Little Rock, Arkansas. It was just me driving home. I was about an hour out of town. And there was tornado activity in the city, my hometown. And I had Natalie on the phone, and she's in the closet with her daughter, And so, they're in there, and I think they've got a mattress over their heads, and they're waiting, to see what's going to happen. And it was in my mind at that moment that I decided I was not going to let this happen again. So I put a storm shelter in. And it's one of those funky ones that you put in the garage. I hadn't even known these existed till just a couple of years ago. But it's freaky. They come in with a backhoe, right? First of all, they cut out a big section of your garage, or right where you park your car. They just cut it out, the concrete. They remove the concrete. And then they take a backhoe and they dig way down. And they drop this concrete and steel box right in the hole. And they fill all around it with concrete. And you have a storm shelter in your garage. And so when the sirens go off, you just go out there and you can actually do it. If the car doesn't have a long enough profile, you can actually leave the car in the garage and you can just go sort of the back there and slide the door and climb down the ladder. And there's little benches down there. You lock the big steel door over your head and you are golden, right? If the twister comes over, you are now in a storm shelter. And that's exactly what we did a few nights ago. We're watching the radar, and they call it a hook echo. It's when the air masses meet, you begin to see circulation. And it's to our southwest. We are northeast. It's coming right for us. It's probably 5 minutes away. The sirens are going off, which is a chilling thing. Those who haven't experienced it, it's hard for me to really sort of take you to that moment when you hear the siren and you realize that somewhere there is what they call a lowering, meaning the rotation may actually produce a funnel that touches the ground. And of course, that's when all the damage and loss of life occurs. And so they've got storm chasers out reporting in the dark of night. You can't see anything. It's rainy. So they're trying to see twisters. They're trying to see cloud formations, funnel formations, backlit by lightning. Lightning everywhere. Everyone's looking at the sky. Do we see a twister? Is there a lowering? Is there rotation coming toward the ground? And then the sirens go off and we all go down there. We grab Henry and Rat Dog. We've got Cat. We've got this baby bird we're nursing back to health. We grab 4 animals and a blanket. We all go cram ourselves into this thing and we lock the big steel door over us and the sirens are going off and the thunder's clapping overhead and we are just waiting. You know what? I just, while I was thinking of this, I just pulled up the sound of a tornado siren because I'm going to try to create the experience for you. All right. So imagine you're in a box in the ground, a steel door over your head. There's thunder and lightning and wind and rain and potentially hail all around you. And in the background, you hear this. And it's like you're blind, waiting for a potential tornado, which, by the way, touched down about 1.5 miles from here, briefly. I think it damaged a few homes and then popped back up into the sky. It wasn't a major thing. Nothing like Moore, Oklahoma. It just kind of came and went. But it was close enough that, yeah, it was white knuckle time, you know. The Andrews household had a close encounter, right? Not the first twister I've been through. I've been through 2 in my life. Real fast, since we're just vamping it. I had one when I was 10, 11, and, you know, we saw it. I remember seeing it out the back window, and it had kind of an S shape to it. It curled at the midsection, and then it curled back down to touch the ground. It almost looked like a snake. It was very sinister looking. But the closest encounter was when I was very small. I was like 6, and we were all huddled in the bath. Everybody was in the bathroom, and we pulled a mattress over our heads from one of the bedrooms because we didn't have a safe room, didn't have anything like that. And it was, the tornado actually came and it kind of skipped over the house. Isn't that weird? So as we were watching, there's these new trees in the front yard and they were bent over and the tops of the trees were almost touching the ground. The wind is just angry. It's just wailing, just screaming, you know. And then we run in and we wait for the storm to pass. When we get out of the house, somebody else's roof is in our front yard. Somebody else lost a portion of their whole house, ended up in the front of our home. And our home, we just lost a few shingles. The twister just sort of skipped through or skipped over somehow. Well, you just know a religious family thought that was the hand of God. I just think the Lord came and he just lifted that tornado right over the top of our house. He just protected us, divine protection. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. And of course, when I was a kid, I was like, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Jesus loves us so much. He just protected us. And of course, I'm not stopping to think about anyone else. Hey, what about the poor bastard who just lost his roof? Yeah. How come Jesus couldn't have just taken his divine fingernail and flicked that twister just a little further to the left? What's that about? That's how I used to think as a religious person. It's how many people think today. In fact, a great example of that was a story that was, I think Bill Maher just posted it on social media. The headline on Addicting Info was Pastor brags about God saving him from car crash, even though his wife wasn't so lucky. The article posted May 12th of this year. It was written by Elizabeth Parker at Addicting Info, and I'll just read part of it for you. This is what my new Jaguar looked like Sunday night, Pastor Phil Kidd bragged on his Facebook page. But, end quote, but listen to this, it never messed up my hair. It never unbuttoned my suit coat. It never even moved my Mont Blanc pen from my shirt pocket, sheltered in the arms of God. And the article continues, but if God sheltered Kidd, why didn't he also shelter his wife, Leslie? Thankfully, she survived as well, but she fractured 2 vertebrae and has to wear a neck brace. Still, it's strange how, while Kidd, his hair, his suit coat, and his Mont Blanc pen were rolling in God's sheltering arms 4.5 times at 65 miles an hour down the interstate, this pastor's poor wife was left to her own devices. For those of you who don't know what a Mont Blanc pen is, Mont Blanc, I hope I'm saying it right, is a line of, quote, luxury writing instruments that cost $800 and up. An $800 ink pen? You shitting me? The article continues, according to his Facebook page, Kidd is a radio evangelist and pastor of the, I'm not even sure how to say this, Emmaus Baptist Church in Kingsport, Tennessee. He and his wife appear to have been the victims of a hit and run, most likely committed by someone who can't stand douchey guys in red Jaguars. Alas, the assailant had no idea Kidd was driving his red Jag for the Lord, or he wouldn't have done it. And oh, it turns out the Jaguar was brand spanking new, as Kidd explained to his thousands of adoring fans who clamored for photos of the wreckage. And of course, there's pictures in the article. The Jag's totally upside down and jacked up. Which, of course, the photos Kidd was happy to provide. Heck, they didn't even have the car long enough to get the oil changed. As the folks from Stuff Fundies Like dryly commented, quote, this raises a few questions. Why does an evangelist drive a Jaguar and write with a Mont Blanc pen? But more to the point, why would any decent human being brag about their hair not being messed up when their wife has serious and painful injuries? Was she not sheltered in the arms of God, or does she just really not matter? But just when you thought this pastor of disaster couldn't get any more insufferable, Kidd posts another comment on Facebook about how their car stopped flipping right at the 5-mile marker on Route 26. And apparently 5 is the number of grace. Quote, I landed right on grace. And there's a video that I'm not going to even bother with here on the radio. I would like some investigative reporting done on the Jag. You know, who paid for it? Did he go forward and promise everyone, if you help me buy this really swank vehicle, that God will increase your bank account? He'll end up blessing you and your children in this intangible and unprovable way, because that's normally how these types of things work. And I've seen whole sermons given. It's usually done in the sort of the context of tithing. You know, I knew people, they didn't tithe. And they made a pledge that they were going to give God his 10%, because it all belongs to God anyway. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. We're simply returning to the storehouse what is his to begin with. It's not even our money. We're just returning 10% to God. They didn't have the money. They were broke. They had all these bills. They were in the red. They were financially destitute, and yet they still brought their 10%. And they gave to Jesus. And 2 weeks later, a check appeared in the mailbox from an inheritance from a relative they didn't even know they had. And it was exactly the amount that they needed to pay their bills for the entire month. Tell me that's a coincidence. Give today, and God will bless you. This is exactly how these people do it. You give me something tangible so that I can go to the car dealership and buy something tangible, and I promise you in return something intangible given by somebody who isn't even me. Monumental, huge, Olympic-level douchebag quotient on this pastor. I'd be curious to hear the rest of that story. Area code 573. Thanks for calling the Thinking Atheist Radio podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is Jeremy.
Jeremy, we're talking about kind of anything and everything tonight. So what's on your mind? What do you want to talk about?
Well, I had some issues with my wife and my children, and I thought I'd call and see if I could get some input on it.
What do you mean by issues with your wife and children? I have to know more. What are you talking about?
Sure. Well, I've got my wife, Kara, here actually with me, too, by the way.
Hi, Kara.
Hello. Hi.
So what's going on? Give me some specifics.
Yeah, so I'm an atheist, obviously. I was born fundamentalist, evangelical, and as was Kara. And we have 10 and 7-year-old boys who were both indoctrinated up to maybe about 4 years ago when we moved from California to Missouri. And our 10-year-old has a lot of understanding just because he overhears us listening to your podcast and other podcasts and our discussions and things. We're fairly open with what we discuss. And so he has a lot of, as much as a 10-year-old can understand, he has an understanding of our non-belief or some of the whys behind our non-belief. But our 7-year-old, the challenge I'm having is he wants to continue in church, and he asks like from a genuine little boy perspective of why don't we go to church anymore. And he, I see like disappointment in his eyes when we don't go to church, or when we tell him, well, we don't go to church anymore, and here's why. And we try to understand on a very fundamental or very basic child-friendly way. That's, I guess, in a nutshell, that is the issue, is how, from his small, emotionally immature mind, how we can explain the reasons why we don't go to church and why we don't believe some of these things anymore. Because obviously with a child as young as he is, logic and things like that, we can't use that. But it just hurts me because we have a neighbors, for example, that will ask to go to church, or they'll ask him, their daughter will ask him to go to church, and he comes in all bright-eyed, hey, can I go to church with them and go to Sunday school? And we're like, no, Jax, we can't, we're not going to go to church because, we don't, no, I don't know.
That was going to be my next question, is normally if a kid comes to you and says, why aren't we going to church? I would be wondering if there were other influences, if they are surrounded by other people who are taking, his friends are going to church, his family members are all going to church, and so he's watching this. Otherwise, he would have no context in which to ask the question. Is that the case, Kara? There's a bunch of people around him all taking their family to Sunday go to meeting?
Yeah, like Jeremy said, we have our neighbors. They're very into church. He's got friends at school. A few weeks ago we had a birthday party for both of the boys because their birthdays are in the winter. So we did kind of like a spring birthday party. And he invited one of his little friends. And, they're very into church and stuff like that. And of course, Jackson will just say anything and everything. And his dad was over, the little kid's dad was over the next morning to pick him up. And they were eating breakfast, and Jackson just blurts out, my mom and dad and brother don't believe in God, but I do. And the little kid's dad's attitude, immediately changed, and he wasn't very talkative to me after that, which was my first experience with really an encounter with somebody, knowing that we don't really believe in God anymore. It was kind of awkward, but just situations like that, and he has friends that go to church at school and stuff like that too, so...
My limited perspective is that I just don't think 7 years old is too early to start thinking and talking logically for your children. I understand they're children, right? We all know what it was like to be a kid. I want, I need, I feel is kind of what governs us. We don't have education like our adults do. We don't have life experience. We don't really have the perspective. We haven't developed in a lot of ways. But I do think that we can approach these things logically in full view of our children and begin to give them the tools to do the same. It's difficult. You're in a largely religious culture. Can I ask what part of the country you live in?
Well, we were born and raised in Bakersfield, California, and but that's where all of our family is. Well, now we live in Columbia, Missouri. It's in central Missouri, and it's the city that we live is fairly liberal. It's not very religious because it's a huge college town and it's just a university sort of atmosphere.
Yeah.
But you go 5 minutes out of Columbia anywhere, and it's very religious. So,
and you got your kid just walking around going, "Mom and Dad don't believe in God, everybody," and you're like, "Oh boy, here we go."
He has no shame.
You're wanting to say these things on your timing, and you can't really control what his timing is at all, kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, I mean, with the logic piece, what we've done is we've had discussions, for example, about Noah's Ark. And I mean, to me, that's like the most, elementary story that you can disprove. I mean, that's in the Bible. And so what I do is I just take the whole Socratic method with just asking him questions like, well, where did Noah put the tigers to keep them from eating the deer and this and that? And how did penguins get there when they only exist in cold climates? And how did the kangaroos get back to Australia without leaving any fossils? And, just basic questions like that. And it jogs his mind and it encourages him. But he, I think it's funny because at 7, he's like, oh, I could see it in his eyes. Like, oh, yeah, that's a really good point, but I don't understand.
Well, I wouldn't panic too much about him. I wouldn't panic too much about whether or not he wants to go to church. In fact, I don't think that he should be blocked from attending church. I think he needs to know what goes on in a church. But I think that experience has to happen in full view of mom and dad, where you can't be hyper-targeted by these folks they've got their hooks out for your kid, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point, too, with at least letting him experience that as long as there's some sort of parental boundary or guidance there. But like with our neighbors, for example, we're very casual friends, not very close friends, because they're not just Christians. They're hyper-evangelical. Every time they're nice, it's because it's, hey, why don't you come to church with us? So I'm very hesitant to allow them to go with them just because they absolutely have those hooks out. But I get what you're saying with at least letting him experience.
I mean, it sucks for you. I mean, but if he goes, you should probably be right there at his shoulder, and you're the one who has to sit through it. But I think it also allows you the opportunity to help him understand. I mean, there's a forbidden fruit aspect that if you say, don't go, you can't, it looks like you are trying to do what the religious do, and they cordon people off from differing and opposing ideas. If you can make church part of a larger topic of what do different religions believe, and you can make that church just one example, expose the kid to what Christianity is and what they teach and what they believe, but also expose the kid to all of these other different religions out there. And I have a suspicion that by doing so, the kid's going to begin to see a pattern. Hey, wait a minute. Everybody's kind of doing an interpretive dance to the same song here. Their deities have different proper names, but they're all kind of doing the same stuff. And they're all fighting with each other about whose invisible friend is the right one. And it may take him years, but I think he'll figure it out. That's just my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kara, does it scare you to have your kid involved or in attendance in a church service?
No, it doesn't scare me. I'm still kind of new to this. I've been on a journey of self-discovery, I guess, for the last couple of years, and I've just recently started reading some of the books that Jeremy has and listening to your podcast, which I listen to like 5 a day now. But
Thank you.
It doesn't scare me because I still remember what it feels like when I was younger to be in church, and I'm okay with letting him go. But like you said, it's probably as long as we're there with him
or somebody you trust. Or somebody you trust. I mean, the thing about the church is they pitch fact, but they're playing to emotion. So they're going to be on the stage and they're going to be selling truth with a capital T, but they're playing to emotion. And how susceptible is a freaking 7-year-old to that kind of thing? I mean, he is easy meat. And I think you've got to be able to be there to run interference and to provide some context to the visit. Hey, check this out. This will be interesting. Watch the kind of songs they sing. Listen, what did he say during the sermon? There's a story about that in the Bible. Let's talk some more about the Bible. The Bible also talks about this and this and this and this and this and this. Did you know that people have researched where the Bible came from? Do you know that, some people believe that Jesus may be an echo of other gods and other religions? And you can use the church experience as a springboard to go into a much more productive discussion as long as you are there to provide the context. And ultimately, at the end of the day, and you can communicate this to anyone in your circle who has questions about you and your non-belief, we didn't wake up and decide not to believe in Jesus. We woke up and said, I just want to figure out what the truth is, and I want to follow the chain of evidence wherever it leads. I just want to live a truthful life. I don't want to lie to myself, even if that lie makes me happy in the short term. And if Jesus or Allah or Krishna or whoever shows up tomorrow, if we see demonstrations of divine activity, supernatural activity, if something like that happens in 5 minutes, we're all over it, because we want to live truthful lives. And you need to understand that about us. And I think your kids need to see that as well. We didn't wake up and say, we want to define ourselves as non-believers. We want to define ourselves as pro-thinkers, pro-science, pro-evidence, demonstrate it, and then we can go there. And every day then becomes a day of discovery. And if you can sort of frame it in the positive, I think that opens up the child's world to amazing possibilities. And who knows, maybe one day they'll come back and teach us something, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you both for the call. Much appreciated.
Awesome. Thanks.
If I may, I want to take just a second and say a huge, enormous thank you to everybody who's posting the photographs of their NatureBox shipments as they come in. NatureBox being the sponsor of tonight's broadcast. What I didn't expect was that when people were getting the NatureBox stuff and the boxes would come in, they'd take pictures and they would tag me in it, and they would talk about the snacks that they like the best. And it has been a huge hit, and I am delighted. And they've just added 3 new snacks to the lineup, and they're really proud of them. And I haven't tasted them yet, but I'm putting them on my list, right? They're going in the pantry. The mini Belgian waffles, the strawberry lemonade fruit stars, and the sweet and salty nut medley. Hot off the press, is brand new in the lineup, so that's something you can try out if you would like as you fill up your own NatureBox box. Over 100 healthy and crave-worthy options that are delivered right to your door. 0 artificial flavors, colors, or sweeteners, 0 grams trans fats, and no high-fructose corn syrup. If you've never tried NatureBox, you can sign up for your free trial box that features 5 of their most popular snacks. Again, delivered right to you. Just log on and check it out. naturebox.com/thinkingatheist. naturebox.com/thinkingatheist. What else is going on in the world? Well, there's this article that was posted in the Daily Mail, of all places, which I guess is kind of the National Enquirer of the UK. The headline says this: Texas high school football player claims he met Jesus, who told him everything would be all right after he collapsed in gym class and had no pulse for 20 minutes. Now, wait a minute. I have to go to the UK to read about a thing that happened in Texas? What's that about? Because I haven't seen it anywhere else. I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure in the Bible Belt, there are probably reprints and repostings and links everywhere. I just haven't seen them. But I'm reading the Daily Mail about a Texas kid? Here's the article, or the gist of it anyway. A Texas 17-year-old high school football player claims he saw Jesus after he collapsed in gym class and was without a heartbeat for 20 minutes. I need a physician here. Is that even possible? Like no heartbeat, meaning they didn't detect a heartbeat and there may have been a mild one? I mean, don't you have massive brain damage if there's no heartbeat for 20 minutes? That makes no sense to me. Zach Clements of Brownwood, Texas, was taken to the hospital where doctors worked to revive him after he collapsed while running sprints in his physical education class at Victory Life Academy on May 5th. Aha, we've got a Christian school here where it happened. Just as doctors were about to pronounce Zach dead, his pulse returned and he was airlifted to Cook Children's Hospital in Fort Worth. He woke up in the intensive care unit days later. Now on the road to recovery, Zach said he saw Jesus just before regaining a pulse. Quote, "When I was out those 20 minutes, I saw a man who had long ruffled hair and a kind of thick beard, and it didn't take me long to realize that was Jesus," he told CBS Dallas Fort Worth. "I went up to him, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he told me everything would be all right and not to worry." Zach's father, Billy, said, though some might find his son's story unbelievable, he and his family see a divine miracle as the only explanation for Zach's revival. That's right, Billy. Whatever you do, don't acknowledge the paramedics who arrived on scene after 911 was called, which is weird for a Christian establishment to actually rely on human beings in the shadow of the divine protective hand of God. Don't acknowledge the physicians who actually brought his ass back to life. And don't acknowledge the folks who worked tirelessly around the clock in the intensive care unit as he was coming back to consciousness. No, let's talk about the hallucination he had while being deprived of oxygen because he had no heartbeat. I understand the desire to believe. I really do. This is just crazy. The story in this story is actually all the stuff that this family is ignoring. And on top of all of that, it brings the question, was this white Jesus that he saw? Right? He's from Brownwood, Texas. So the Jesus that he saw, I would like to know more. Can someone sit Zach down and say, look, when you met Jesus, you saw the guy, ruffled hair, and he had a beard. What color was his skin? Was it white Jesus? Because that would be weird. The story does raise many interesting questions. Area code 801, you're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hey, this is Spencer from Utah.
Spencer, what do you want to talk about tonight?
Well, I mean, one thing that I've just noticed that's pretty common among the religious people in my circles is that, and not only the religious, but the ex-religious people, is that one of the biggest assets that people have in their transition from faith to reason is a basic understanding of science, and more specifically, a relationship that it has with emotion and feelings.
Meaning that they are painting scientific explanations with an emotional brush?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and not only that, but also attributing it to something that's unnatural and unexplainable. And, there's this really popular common romance almost with mystery and with magic and stuff like that. And I kind of feel like that they're putting that spin on it, and they don't really have it right. You don't need magic or superstition to view science as amazing or beautiful or majestic.
Their perception of us is that we take something that they consider to be amazing and awesome and mysterious, something that stirs a well of emotion inside them, and we take it into a cold lab under white-hot fluorescent lights, and we dissect it and rob it of all the things that made it amazing to begin with, right? It was the mystery, the wonder, maybe even the not knowing that was so magical, and we want to demystify it. We want to take all the awesomeness out of it. It really reveals how little they understand about science.
Oh, absolutely.
I got a great email yesterday from someone, and it was the typical, science used to think this, and then science had to go and admit it was wrong and change its findings. And this was like a gotcha moment in the email. Shows you how great science is. Science has to admit it's wrong all the time. And it's a way essentially of saying, because science is not perfect, it's no good or it's useless, which is just crazy.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's illogical. I mean, the majority of religious people that I know are comfortable to live in this small bubble of understanding where, everything that we have discovered through science is all well and dandy now. But everything that we can't explain or that we haven't been able to yet, they just attribute to God. It's the classic God of the gaps logic. And through that bubble that they're so passionate about protecting, they hinder the rest of us from advancing.
And it's an amazing world out there once we open our eyes to it and allow ourselves to step out of the cocoon that has kept us so insulated for so long. Spence, thanks so much for the call, and thanks for being a part of the broadcast. It means a lot, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take it easy.
All right.
Josh sent a message and said, "This is on my mind. The body alone is an amazing thing and capable of doing some strange things. Some people are even immune to AIDS. Hell, my aunt died in her 90s and was obese her entire life. That wasn't divine either. That was just genetics. So someone becoming well from a deadly illness doesn't give me reason to believe a supernatural force was at work, even if there is zero explanation." And he sent a link. Let's see what he's talking about here. The article is called The Power of Prayer was posted May the 11th at NBC's Channel 12 in Louisville, Kentucky. Quote, "We deliver stories often of pain, heartache, and community outcry. And often we hear the plea for prayer. We did not want to get into the debate of believers and non-believers, but it's a subject that everyone has a comment about. When the subject of prayer was posted on Facebook prior to the airing of this story, thousands commented both positive and negative." Is that even a correct sentence? Thousands commented both, wouldn't it be positively and negatively? That's weird. It's a journalist, right? Whatever. Quote, "I've seen what prayer can do. I've seen what prayer can do in my own life," Sherry Mills said with commitment. Mills gives prayer full credit for where she has landed. Mills explained she was fearful of everything. Quote, "I started as a very timid person. I'd suffered from panic attacks." For 10 years, Mills suffered from what she calls bondage and fear. After suffering a panic attack in the choir, Mills said to herself if she could just make it home, she would never sing again. She did make it home, and that is where she stayed. She removed herself from everything, including the church choir. Quote, "My world started getting smaller and smaller until I was a prisoner in my own body." The key, this is not her speaking, this is actually the reporter. The key to getting out of that self-inflicted prison was prayer. Quote, "It was through prayer that gave me the strength to start taking back every area of my life, not only to the point that I was before the panic attacks, but it took me beyond that." She believes in that power so much she started the one-voice prayer movement to heal humankind. Medical research focusing on the power of prayer in healing has nearly doubled in the past 10 years. Prayer helps us calm ourselves down, reduce our anxieties, sometimes lowers our blood pressure, said Dr. Terry Burden from the University of Louisville's Department of Religious Studies. After refusing to even review a study with the word prayer in it 4 years ago, the National Institutes of Health is now funding a prayer study through its Frontier Medicine Initiative. Quote, "I also think God has blessed us with extraordinary minds and spirits, and there's a lot of wonderful healing that goes on. I would not mess with a God that I didn't think would heal somebody. Spirituality is so experiential. If a human being says to me, my life was changed, this happened to me because of prayer, then I have a hard time arguing with that," said his co-worker, Dr. Jim Hunter. Okay, wait a minute. So we have somebody who's a purported scientist who says that an anecdotal claim is hard to argue with. By that same criteria, by that same standard, that same measuring stick, if someone was to have come up and said that aliens abducted me and cured my cancer, he would then, because it was an experiential thing, right? Because it was something deeply felt and deeply believed by someone, that he would, quote, have a hard time arguing with that. If someone came to him and said it was because of chakras or energy crystals or because they tapped into some sort of another membrane or spoke to their spirit animal, and that was an experiential claim, he would have a, quote, hard time arguing with that. This is a scientist? We asked Dr. Burden from the article, we asked Dr. Burden, does prayer work? He had no trouble answering. Quote, "It does. There's no doubt about that." There's no doubt about that? "My granddaughter came down with E. coli. Prayer made a difference. We know that. A believer knows that. A believer who trusts in the power of prayer knows that. Anybody who will call his name in prayer knows he answers. He's a God who answers." Couple more lines from the article. All three of the believers stressed, there is a disclaimer. Well, of course there is. God answers prayer according to his will, his wisdom, and his love for us. Dr. Hunter said, God does answer prayer, but, quote, sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no, and sometimes the answer is not right now. Just like a parent, not right now. How convenient. So whatever does or does not happen, can be fit into the answered prayer mold. Well, that's amazing. By the way, if God's will be done, then our prayers are futile, because God's will be done. If his will is not being done, why isn't God's will being done? And if we are praying for something that is then God's will, and he hasn't done it, why wouldn't he then do it? If it isn't God's will and we pray for it, why are we wasting our time praying for it? And here's a larger question. Let's say you've got a child with cancer, and you go to prayer to God for a curing of the cancer, a miracle. No one is asking the larger question of, one, why would a loving father with omnipotent power allow the child to get cancer in the first place? If the child has cancer and God for some reason allows it, why is it then acceptable for God to hold the answered prayer hostage until you and I give up the proper offerings? It's essentially what's happening. God peers down through space and time, and he sees this child in intensive care, holding on to life by a thread, his or her body just toxified by cancer, an entire family and friends, an entire neighborhood community, perhaps a whole city in mourning and grieving and pain and anguish. God keeps the healing miracle in his back pocket until you and whoever come forward and say the right prayer at the right time for the right number of repetitions, and then he releases the miracle. Quite often, at a place in time where the cancer-ridden child is surrounded by human physicians and scientists, so the miracle might appear to come from human hands instead of divine ones. There's so much wrong with the prayer scenario when you stop and think about it. Every day, prayers are offered to alleviate the pain and suffering of this world. Every day, a supposedly omniscient and benevolent being in space looks down and sees all of this happening and either does nothing because he wants to do nothing, or he's waiting for us to do some tap dance in a specific way at a specific time until he's pleased enough to say, okay, now I'll go fix a few things. Is that worthy of our worship? Is it worthy of our allegiance? Is it an admirable quality? Is it something we would want to be a part of? Hell no. Look, if you and I were omnipotent, you and I had supreme power, world hunger ends in 5 seconds. Cancer is cured in 4 seconds. The suffering and pain and insanity and injustice in this universe ends in 3 seconds. We wouldn't sit around and wait until somebody had pleased us in a way where we felt so inclined to perhaps fix part of the problem. We would fix the problem. As far as people having benefit in their lives after praying, well, this speaks to the power of positive thinking, the power of having a positive attitude. In fact, these attitudes produce positive physiological effects in the human body, whether you call it prayer, meditation, or whatever. A centering of yourself, thinking positive thoughts, you actually have a chemical reaction in your body. Going to a church service, participating in communal worship, hearing an inspiring message, being in a group of hundreds and thousands of people sharing an experience produces a chemical response in the brain. There are physical reasons that are supposed to have a metaphysical origin. So if somebody has a better mental attitude, someone is able to center themselves, whether it's through prayer or whatever, they are essentially creating the solution themselves and then giving the credit to an invisible other out there. You construct the coping mechanism brick by brick by brick until a structure exists, and then you give credit to the structure. That's essentially what's happening. Area code 774, you're on the Thinking Atheist Radio podcast. Who's this?
Seth, this is Liam.
Liam, thanks so much for calling. It's kind of an anything goes, sort of the kitchen sink kind of a show tonight. So what do you want to talk about?
So how about atheism and politics?
Oh, yeah. As if I didn't get enough hate mail as it is. Let's talk about, do you mean like politics as in Congress and the president, or politics as in all the political infighting within the movement?
I would say all the political infighting inside of and I'll put quotation marks around the board movement.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah,
You're going to open up
exactly.
this can of worms, and before you know it, it's going to be just a riot in the comment section in my inbox. Well, what's on your mind? What do you think?
When you think about the atheist movement, it's an extremely liberal movement, and I'm seeing a little too much for my taste, the same exclusionary, the same logical fallacy-based arguments against anything other than liberal political policies inside of the movement. I myself, every test I've ever taken to kind of nail down where I fall politically, I'm about as dead center as you could possibly be. And if you're not liberal, I've actually been told by atheists, if you're not liberal, you're not a real atheist. I've been told by atheists that if you're anything other than liberal, well, clearly only a fully functioning intellectual brain can be an atheist, and that brain would be liberal, so then you mustn't be fully functioning.
Not believing in God doesn't necessarily say anything else about anybody. It doesn't even say that they came to atheism for rational reasons. Maybe they were born in a non-religious area and never thought about it. Maybe they became an atheist for some wacky, crazy, illogical reason. They're an atheist, but it doesn't mean they're a rationalist. It doesn't mean they are a humanist. It doesn't mean anything else necessarily about them. Now, having said that, I understand why in many cases people may lean more left than right. When I was a true blue Fox News watching conservative Bible thumping believer, then I was anti-gay, and that's something that the liberal parties have come down on the right side of, in my opinion. I was anti-abortion to the nth degree, I didn't advocate radical acts against abortion doctors and whatnot, but I felt like it was the taking of a human soul. A precious life had been created. The child couldn't fight for itself. I was anti-abortion. That changed. I became pro-choice after. I still find the abortion discussion extremely difficult and complex. I still wrestle with it. But those and many other issues, I found that I sort of switched to more of a left-leaning position once I freed myself from religious constraints. But I understand what you're talking about. There tends to be a very black, white, A, B, up, down, yes, no kind of a perspective when people are defending one political party against the other. The thing that makes me occasionally crazy is how many people on the left look at any left-leaning icon or politician like they're the atheist Jesus. That makes me crazy.
Oh, absolutely. Now, one of those things that is beautiful about atheism, because I too was a hardcore right-wing Bible-thumping Christian. I did it for about a decade, and I got out back in 2012 at the age of, it would have been 24. And one of the beautiful things that I like about atheism is that we get to pick. We get to pick what's important to us and what makes logical sense and makes sense of the facts. And so, for example, I know I've heard before that you're pro-2A because you carry conceal, correct?
Yes, I own and have a license for a firearm, yes. I've addressed it a few times, and I always see sort of the audience split. It's like a parting of the seas, Yeah,
exactly. And all of a sudden, the people who we're supposed to have something in common with, you're automatically condemned. I know for me, I'm fairly liberal, on the social issues. But when the moment you say that you want to hold on to your own tax dollars and invest them your own way, it's like you've gone and said that you're a Bible right-wing, thumping Christian all of a sudden. And there is this definite up or down, yes or no. You either are a liberal or a conservative approach inside of our own group of, as a demographic. So I recently got so sick and tired of it that I said, you know what, it's going to take me a long time to build this. I don't know where this is going to go. I'm making a Godless Moderates Facebook page.
Godless Moderates.
Godless Moderates. And I'm going to try to find every single politically moderate, somebody who, anybody who fits that demographic, who is an atheist, who they're not a right-winger, they're not a left-winger. I have issues that I care about that put me in the middle of two warring parties, and I want to invite every single person who feels that way to go and like that page and build a community around that.
Now, Liam, does that really do what you want it to do? I mean, because there are some issues where I want to be far, far, far left on. I mean, it's where I line up. There are other issues that I'm actually far right on. I mean, you and I may line up on small government, right? So I may line up more over here on that issue. So saying that I'm in the middle and I'm neutral and I'm moderate, automatically, I think it may be a surrendering on the issue instead of actually taking it case by case, issue by issue.
Well, when you think about the political platforms out there, and here's the thing, when you go and you look at census data in the last couple of elections, it seems like every 2 years when we have a big election, you look at that data, and the number of people actually registering for one party or another is plummeting.
Oh, I totally understand the disenfranchised with the Democrats and the Republicans, but I will say I am much more disenfranchised with the Republicans. I mean, right now they're the only two parties in town, and if I have to attend one, if I have to vote on one side, I'm going to vote for the party that lines up more on the progressive issues, the human rights issues, the pro-woman, the pro-LGBT, the pro-rights, the pro-enlightenment issues. And while they're a hugely flawed party, for my money, the Democrats are pretty much all I got to choose from.
Here's the problem with that thought set. We're looking at two choices and we're saying, well, I'm going to take the lesser of two evils. Why aren't we out there trying to lobby for more parties? Why aren't we out there trying to find more opportunities to find candidates who fit our needs? At some point in time here, we need to start uniting people who are looking at the left and the right and saying, I don't agree with either of you. I have to go my own way here. And I have to go and I have to build something of my own.
I think that in its purest form is a great idea, right? But until the decades-long, if not longer, process of trying to create and build and implement another political party, other political options, you're still stuck with R&D, right? I mean, there's going to be an election in 2016. What do we do then? These are the only tools we have to work with. And I think the disenfranchised, and I've been guilty in my own life, they just want to check out sometimes. So now they're not involved in the process. Well, is that really a solution? You know what? Both parties are corrupt. Screw them both. I'm going to check out and do my own thing. I think the challenges are hugely complex, but ultimately I want to come back to the larger point that you made at the beginning, that people tend to speak about the opposition in terms of caricature. And I think you're absolutely spot on. Now, many progressives are going to flip out and say, no, all Republicans are idiots, all Republicans. The fact is that's just not necessarily true. There are a lot of very intelligent people who are hugely conservative, who have an R after their name on their political card, on their voting card. And we may feel they are misguided or misdirected, or we just have a disagreement on these issues, but it doesn't mean they're idiots. It doesn't mean that they're all the things that they are charged to be simply because they are in disagreement with you. I do stand by the idea, though, that if I have to choose in this landscape, I'm going to have to choose the more progressive party, the one that more often stands for human rights. It's going to have to be the Democrats until a better system is devised. And I'm all ears if anybody out there knows how we can solve the world's problems, how we can unite the divided, how we can take all of this mountain of this cacophony of hugely complex issues and somehow get everybody on the same page. I myself don't know that it's possible, but if anybody's got some ideas, knock yourself out. I'm all ears.
It's time to start bringing those commonly minded people, those people who recognize that the Democrats don't necessarily stand for all of their needs, as I recognize.
Nor are they automatically intelligent, nor are they automatically enlightened, nor are they automatically corruption-free. I mean, the idea that just because they have a D by their name, they get a pass, that makes me crazy. And I see it a lot among free thinkers. They almost worship Democratic politicians, and I don't really get it. And it's proof that we can be hugely skeptical in certain areas of our lives and then just turn that switch off when we come over here to our little favorite stuff and we just decide, hey, they're amazing. Well, are we being honest? Are we genuinely judging them on their merits? I think not.
Well, I appreciate you having me on the show, Seth. One more time, everyone. That was Moderates over on Facebook. I hope to see a network and befriend as many godless moderates as I can possibly find.
All right. Good luck with the page, man. Let me know what happens over there, okay?
Absolutely.
Not a hugely long show tonight, but I wanted to kind of make the final segment a reading of something that had been sent to me in my email inbox a few days ago. I read it and laughed my ass off, and then I posted it online. but it was so good I thought maybe I would just read it for you here. It is an exchange, supposedly. I mean, it's probably bogus, but it's just hysterical, between a school chaplain and a guy named David Thorne. And I guess David Thorne has a history of this kind of thing, or he's got a site, or maybe it's this blog that I'm looking at. I don't know. There's no header on it. It's 27b/6.com/Easter, in case you want to go and check it out. And I'll try to remember to put the link in. I realize Easter's long past, but the exchange just made me laugh out loud. And I'm just going to read it to you because it's kind of a relaxed week, and I figured it'd be entertaining for you. There's a permission slip posted that says this: Dear parent or guardian of Seb Thorne, on Monday, the 22nd of March, classes from year 5 and 6 will be attending a presentation held outside of school grounds at the Mary Richardson Memorial Hall. During the presentation, the true meaning of Easter will be explained in an entertaining and fun-filled play performed by members of the Grange Uniting Church Youth Drama Group. Students must have a signed permission slip prior to departure. If you give your child permission to attend this presentation, please sign and return to the school with your child. If you have any questions about the presentation, please call me or send me an email. And it's signed Daryl Robinson, school chaplain. And there's 2 boxes. One of them's already checked. The one box on top says, I give my child permission. It's already checked. And the other says, I do not give my child permission to attend the class presentation. So the chaplain had already sort of pre-ticked the box. Well, here's the response from David Thorne. And again, this may be a poet, may be a parody, I don't know, but it's still brilliant. David responds to the chaplain, Dear Daryl, I've received your permission slip featuring what I can only assume is a levitating rabbit about to drop an egg on Jesus. And on the permission slip, that's exactly what it is. There's an Easter egg holding Bunny right over Jesus carrying the cross. It's weird. Thank you for pre-ticking the permission box, as this has saved me not only from having to make a choice, but also from having to make my own 45-degree downward stroke followed by a 20% longer 45-degree upward stroke. Without your guidance, I may have drawn a picture of a cactus wearing a hat by mistake. As I trust my offspring's ability to separate fact from fantasy, I'm happy for him to participate in your indoctrination process on the proviso that all references to Jesus are replaced with the term purportedly magic Jew. Regards, David. And the response from the chaplain is, Hello, David. The tick in the box already was a mistake I noticed after printing them all. I've seen the play, and it's not indoctrinating anyone. It's a fun play performed by a great bunch of kids. You do not have to be religious to enjoy it. You are welcome to attend if you have any concerns. Daryl Robinson, school chaplain. And the response again from David. Dear Daryl, thank you for the kind offer. Being unable to think of anything more exciting than attending your entertaining and fun-filled afternoon, I tried harder and thought of about 400 things. I was actually in a Bible-based play once and played the role of annoyed about having to do this. My scene involved offering a pot plant, as nobody knew what myrrh was, to a plastic baby Jesus, then standing between I forgot my costume so I'm wearing the teacher's poncho and I don't feel very well. Highlights of the play included a nervous donkey with diarrhea causing I don't feel very well to vomit onto the back of Mary's head, and the lighting system designed to provide a halo effect around the manger, overheating and setting it alight. The teacher later criticized for dousing an electrical fire with a bucket of water and endangering the lives of children, left the building in tears and the audience in silence. We only saw her again briefly when she came to the school to collect her poncho. Also, your inference that I'm without religion is incorrect, and I'm actually torn between 2 faiths. While your God's promise of eternal life is very persuasive, the Papua New Guinean mud god, Pikiwoki, is promising a pig and as many coconuts as you can carry. Regards, David. The chaplain responds, Hello, David. While it would be a pity for Seb to miss out on the important message of hope that the story of the resurrection gives, if you don't want him to attend the presentation on Monday, then just tick the box that says, I do not give my child permission to attend. David responds, Dear Daryl, I understand the importance the resurrection story holds in your particular religion. If I too knew some guy who had been killed and placed inside a cave with a rock in front of it, and I visited the cave to find the rock moved and his body gone, the only logical assumption would be that he had risen from the dead and is the Son of God. Once, my friend Simon was rushed to hospital to have his appendix removed, and I visited him the next day to find his bed empty. I immediately sacrificed a goat and burnt a witch in his name, but it turned out he had not had appendicitis, but just needed a good poo and was at home playing PlayStation. Someone probably should have asked, "So the rock has been moved and he's gone. Has anyone checked his house?" I realized PlayStation wasn't around in those days, but they probably had the equivalent, a muddy stick or something. I would have said, "Can someone please check if Jesus is at home playing with his muddy stick? If not, then and only then should we all assume logically that he has risen from the dead and is the Son of God." If we accept, though, that Jesus was the Son of an infinite being, capable of anything, he probably did have a PlayStation, probably a PlayStation 7. I know I have to get my offspring all the latest gadgets. God would probably have said to him, "I was going to wait another 2,000 years to give you this, but seeing as how you've been good, just don't tell your mother about Grand Theft Auto." Also, is it true that Jesus can be stabbed during a sword fight and be okay due to the fact that he can only die if he gets his head chopped off? Regards, David. Response from the chaplain. Nowhere in the Bible does Jesus have a sword fight. Learning the teachings of the Bible is not just about religion. It teaches a set of ethics that are sadly not taught by parents nowadays. Daryl Robinson, school chaplain. The exchange continues. Dear Daryl, you raise a valid point, and I appreciate you pointing out my failings as a parent. Practicing a system of ethics based on the promise of a reward, in your case an afterlife, is certainly preferable to practicing a system of ethics based on it simply being the right thing to do. Many years ago, I lived next door to a Christian named Mr. Stevens. You could tell he was a Christian because he had a fish sticker on his Datsun. He used to wave at his kids from his bathroom window on hot summer days as we played in the sprinkler. I learned a lot from Mr. Stevens, mainly about wrestling holes. The trick is to oil up really well, making it hard for the other person to hold you down. I would often lie on his living room rug looking up at the pictures of sunsets behind quotes from Psalms while waiting for him to unwrap his legs from around my torso. Your job would be made much easier if, after making the school children sit through an hour of church youth group teens dancing, singing, and reenacting Jewish magic tricks, you simply told them that it was just a small taste of what hell is like. And if they didn't believe in Jesus, they would have to sit through it again. When I was at school, we were forced to attend a similar presentation. Herded into the gym under the pretense of free chips, we were assaulted with an hour of hippies playing guitars and a dance routine featuring some kind of colorful coats and a lot of looking upwards. Due to the air conditioning in the packed gym not working and it being a hot day, the hippie wearing the colorful coat blacked out mid-performance and struck his head against the front edge of the stage, spraying the first row of cross-legged children with blood. Unconscious, he also urinated. There was a bit of screaming and an ambulance involved, and everyone agreed it was the best play they had ever seen. Regards, David. The chaplain replies, I don't see what any of that has to do with this play. It's important for children to have balance in their life, and spirituality is as important in a child's life as anything else. There's an old saying that life without religion is life without beauty. Daryl Robinson, school chaplain. Dear Daryl, I agree completely that balance is an important component of a child's education. I will assume then that you will also be organizing a class excursion to a play depicting the 15 billion year expansion of the universe from its initial particle soup moments following the Big Bang through to molecule coalescence, galaxy and planetary formation, and eventually life. Perhaps your church youth group could put together an interpretive dance routine representing the behavior of Saturn's moon Hyperion, shattered by an ancient collision and falling randomly back together, tugged to and fro by the gravitational pull of Titan, 16 sister moons, the multi-billion-fold moonlets of Saturn's rings, Saturn's gravitational field, companion planets, the variabilities of Sol, stars, galaxy, neighboring galaxies, or possibly not, according to an old saying, there is no beauty in this. Also, while I understand the play is to be held outside school grounds, due to the fact that it is illegal to present medieval metaphysic propaganda in public schools, it is also my understanding that you're now required by law, as of last year, to go by the title Christian volunteer rather than school chaplain. A memo you may have missed or filed in your overflowing facts that cease to exist when they are ignored tray. Regards, David. I gotta continue. The response. I'm not going to waste any more precious time replying to your stupid emails. If you don't want your child to attend the play, just indicate that on the permission slip. And on the permission slip, he drew a whole shit ton of just crazy stuff. It looks like a cactus with a face and a ball cap, and he's got his face tacked over Jesus's with Scotch tape. Just wild. Just wild. And the chaplain responds, I will pray for you. David Thorne responds, thanks. Mention that I want a Toyota Prado if you get the chance, a white one with dark gray leather interior and sat nav. Regards, David. I've had enough of your nonsense. Don't email me again. And then an email from God. Daryl, this is God. Buy David a Toyota Prado, a white one, with dark gray leather interior and sat nav. And the chaplain says, I'm serious. And David finally responds, okay. It's actually funnier in print, I think, but it's funny any way you slice it. I'll include the link in the description box of this broadcast. Just something funny that kind of caught my eye that I thought would be great fodder for the radio tonight. And that's the show for this evening. Thank you so much for listening tonight. I'll see you in San Francisco on Saturday afternoon. Again, the details for that tour stop at thethinkingatheist.com/event. It's going to be a great trip to the West Coast. And then I'll be back on the radio on Tuesday night. Now that the show is over, it is time to get free snacks delivered to your door from Nature Box. With over 100 different options to choose from, it's the bold flavors you crave and a way to feel smarter about snacking. Just go to naturebox.com/thinkingatheist to start your free trial tonight. naturebox.com/thinkingatheist.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.